The political spectrum. We use it to understand political thought. We use it to understand political ideas and to classify ourselves based on what we believe politically. On one end, on one extreme, you have the left, characterized by socialism, by redistributive programs. And on the right, you have conservative or right-leaning thought, characterized by powerful military and, in some cases, restrictions on social norms, restrictions on acceptable behavior. In theory, everyone falls somewhere on this straight line. It sounds good in principle if left and right are necessarily opposites. And it sounds good if all the other ideas neatly fall directly between these two. This is an overly simplified view of political thought. I can simultaneously be extreme left and extreme right. There's lots of differing types of thoughts that fall somewhere between left and right that shouldn't be neatly superimposed over each other. And also, left and right are not exactly opposites. As I move towards right-leaning thought, as I become more conservative, I don't necessarily become less socialist. So clearly, the political spectrum is oversimplified. Different people have looked at it in different ways, trying to make it more useful, trying to make it more precise. One way that this is done is to turn it into a circle, which then becomes the political compass. So now we still have the left and right, but as you move up or down, you can become authoritarian or anti-authoritarian, and you end up somewhere between left and right. Now this is better because this does show a difference between anti-authoritarians and authoritarians, which in the previous model would fall directly on top of each other. Now there's a distinction, so that's better. But it's still the case that as I move towards left thought or right thought, I am moving away from the other. A different way of looking at political thought is turning it into a Cartesian chart. Now here, we start from absolute authoritarian government, zero freedom. Now, as I move on the horizontal axis, I am improving my economic freedom. As I have more and more economic freedom, I am approaching right-leaning thought. I am approaching conservative values. So I've gained a lot of economic freedom, but I still have no personal freedom. Personal freedom is the vertical axis. So as I move up away from authoritarianism, I am increasing my personal freedoms. I am improving my personal freedom, but I'm not getting economic freedom. So this is where we get left-leaning thought, socialism, progressivism. If I get the maximum economic freedom and the maximum personal freedom, now I end up in the realm of anti-authoritarians. This is the realm of libertarians and classical liberals. This system is much better than the other system because now you can see I can approach left thought and right thought simultaneously, or I can approach one or the other exclusively. This is good. This allows for a much more accurate description of different people's political ideas, different political thoughts, different political systems. However, I don't like the distinction of two different types of freedom. Sure, you can understand freedom as economic or personal, but I don't think it's an accurate distinction. There's only one freedom. Freedom cannot be separated into personal and economic. Freedom is freedom. Also, the other big problem with this is that it is suggesting that the natural state, our starting point, is absolute authoritarian government. We start there and we progress outward as we improve our freedom. But the natural state is the opposite. If we are endowed by our Creator with natural rights, with inalienable rights, that means we started with freedom, and we, through the political systems we put in place, lose our freedoms. The origin is freedom. That's our first political value. The other two political values that are opposed to freedom are order and equality. And when I say equality, we are talking about equality of outcome, not equality of opportunity. So as I move on the horizontal axis, I can sacrifice freedom for order. So this is progressing to right-leaning thought. This would take the place of more powerful police and military forces. Also, again, restrictions on personal behavior, restrictions on societal norms, what is considered moral and okay, i.e., what is considered moral is defined legally, and what is not moral can be punished legally. Now, as I move up the vertical axis, I'm going to sacrifice freedom for equality. So to achieve equality of outcome, we might institute redistributive wealth programs. We might institute affirmative action programs. Any number of other programs that are intended to balance out the differences between people and, again, make the overall outcomes more equitable, more equal. And again, in this system, I can approach right-leaning thought and left-leaning thought simultaneously. And as I do that, now I am approaching authoritarian thought. So now we have a clear distinction between the anti-authoritarians and authoritarians, again, as we did with the Nolan chart. And we have a clear distinction between left and right-leaning thought, but they are not opposites. They are not modeled as opposites. Now, where do authoritarian political ideas, political systems, such as communism and fascism fall? Well, they both fall into the authoritarian quadrant of this chart. But a distinction that can be made between the two is how we approach it. If we have an extreme left government that is fighting for an extreme equality of outcome, that then starts to propose and take right-leaning political power to achieve that redistributive program, now we end up with communism. Fascism, on the other hand, is an extremely right government, extremely powerful government, extremely authoritarian, that then decides to use that power in a means of redistribution for those it believes deserve that redistribution of wealth. So, the fascist government is an extreme conservative government that then adds ideas of equality, leftist ideas, into its government, takes more leftist powers, uses the authority it already has to enforce this redistribution. Communism and fascism are just flip sides of the same coin. There are minor distinctions between the two. One is slightly more characteristic of the left and one is slightly more characteristic of the right. But they're both authoritarian. They both require powers of both the left and the right to achieve their goals. The end result is exactly the same. I think this model is much more accurate at describing political ideas. I think it models our ideas much better, and I think it helps interpret political ideas different from your own better than the other models. When we look at things simply as a spectrum, it's easy to misunderstand and misinterpret someone else's ideas. But if we understand it a little bit better, it's a little bit easier to understand them and at least come to the table. At least come to the table and have a discussion about it. Have a discussion about our different ideas, why we believe the different things we do. And if we can't come to common ground, again, at least understand each other.